Welcome to the Signal Pres podcast.
Welcome to the Signal Pres podcast, the place for you to learn, to grow, and to get connected to the body of Christ here at Signal Pres. I'm Joey Sherrod. I am one of your hosts.
And I'm Abby Hutto. I am also one of your hosts.
And we are back by popular demand. The people, the voice of the people, they said, give us more, Joey and Abby. Give us more books.
Yeah, they didn't say give us more Joey and Abby. They said give us more books.
Less you, more books. And we said, well, how would it be possible for us to top what we have previously done with Beth and Carter Newbold? And we thunk to ourselves, you know what? We've got an answer. And what did we decide, Abby?
We decided to invite the pastor and the first lady on. Brother.
First lady!
Scott and Amanda Bowen.
Scott and Amanda Bowen. Welcome to the podcast. Welcome back, Scott. Welcome,
good to be back.
Amanda. Good to have you guys with us.
I'm not sure we'll top Beth and Carter, but here we go.
You know, it's like, some people like strawberry ice cream. Some people like chocolate. We just got something for everybody.
Okay.
Some people like Neapolitan when they can't make up their minds.
Spoiler alert.
Spoiler.
I don't know what we're talking about. What do you mean?
You'll find out later in the
Okay.
podcast. Some people like Skittles and some people like Skittles. So
If you're on this show, you have to like Skittles.
That's right.
Because it's the only thing we play with. When we play the Skittles.
some people like normal
get to know you as
Skittles,
Skittle.
wildberry Skittles, sour Skittles,
Yes.
but Skittles it is.
Skittles it is. Okay, so Scott has played this before, but Amanda,
Okay.
the way we play this game is you pull out a Skittle.
Okay.
You tell us what color you got.
Okay.
So let's see what you got. She has.
Oh, I got a grape.
She got a grape.
And
Grape
an interesting
Skittle.
fact about me is I only like grape Skittles. I don't
Oh,
like
yeah.
Skittles,
Whoa.
but I like grapes.
Now we know who to give the
fortuitous.
grapes to.
I like chocolate, not Skittles.
And then if you'll pick a purple question, read
Okay.
it out loud for us and answer it for us, please.
How about what is something you dislike doing that you have to do regularly anyway? This is quite easy for me. Laundry.
Laundry.
And it's really not even the gathering or the washing or even the folding of the laundry, but it is the getting the laundry put away
Yes.
in all of the places and nagging my children to do the same.
So do your people empty their pockets?
Oh, no, they do not. And sometimes they do not even remove inner layers from outer layers of clothes. We just replaced a part of our washing machine because a pin that had gone through in a pocket had pierced something important. And all the things, candy,
Serious.
ink, chapstick.
My favorite was when Harry's soccer, he was a goalie, so everything smelled awful.
Right.
And his soccer socks would be balled up,
the
and then
balls
they'd
of
go
socks.
through the entire cycle. And then, so when you pull them apart, you're like,
They still smell.
It smells awful,
They
like a
smell awful.
skunk.
Right. We have plenty of dirty laundry, and cleaning it is pretty satisfying. But then, if you've been to my home, we have a large hearth in front of our fireplace, and I will often watch TV while I fold, and I'll get it all folded on the hearth, and then it will sit there.
And then there
a while.
it lies.
There it lies.
It's great.
All right, now Scott's turn. All right, Scott, what color did you get?
Today I pulled a green. Yeah.
All right.
That's the first time I've gotten that one.
Yeah. All right.
Wow. The first time he got it. Only because he dug through his bag to get it.
Scott's been known to cheat, I think.
He does play this game a lot.
I do play this game a lot. Tell about a podcast that you enjoy listening to. I really love listening to it's a radio show, but I listen to podcast form. Wait, Don't Tell Me, which is every Saturday morning they release it, and basically they just go through the news of the week, but it's hilarious. They do it and by playing these games, and it's kind of like stand-up comedy / review of the week, and makes me laugh every time.
It's a great one.
Yeah,
That's
it's
a good
fun.
one.
Even
Saturday
our
morning.
kids like that one sometimes
it's a
in the
good
car.
one.
Yeah.
That was on NPR for a while,
Yeah,
right?
it
still is.
Okay,
Yeah,
it still
yeah,
is
yeah.
on
It is.
NPR? Okay.
Yeah.
But I'm not often listening to the
Sure.
radio on
Yeah.
Saturday morning.
Yeah.
So they do it podcast form.
Yeah. Excellent. All right.
Yeah.
I realized that we didn't give Amanda a chance to say a little bit
know.
about herself.
I did notice that, but I wasn't going to say anything.
Well, thank you.
Here we go.
Too late.
I guess.
So, Amanda, tell us a little bit about yourself. Obviously, we know something about your family. It's late May. what's happening in the Bowen house these days?
Yeah, so most of you probably know, because I imagine these are church listeners, that we have 2 boys in high school and 2 girls in middle school, and we have coming up this weekend. Our oldest son is graduating from high school, which is
right.
wild.
So exciting.
And then our oldest daughter has 8th grade graduation also, so we have a lot of that going on, and just celebrations and trying not to miss anything important on the calendar and those kind of things.
Which is hard to do when you have 4 kids.
It's pretty hard. Yeah, logistics become kind of the dominating part of my day, I guess.
Right. I can imagine.
Yeah.
Amanda, where'd you grow up?
I grew up in Middle Tennessee in Murfreesboro, which if any of you have people playing state sports this week, you will probably be making a trip to Murfreesboro for tennis or soccer or track or all of the spring fling sports, kind of what we are known for. Just right in the middle of the state. We actually have the geographical center of Tennessee, a monument near my parents' house.
All right.
So if you ever want to go to the center of Tennessee,
the heart of Tennessee,
go to the borough.
Excellent. And you went to college. You're a Paladin, right?
I'm a Paladin. I went to Furman University.
Go Furman.
Yeah, go Furman.
Exactly.
Where is Furman?
Furman is in Greenville, South Carolina.
Oh, yes. Okay.
Yeah. And then pharmacy school, am I right?
Yes. Then I went to University of Tennessee for pharmacy school in Memphis for 3+ years, and met Scott in my 3rd year, and then ended up doing my clinical rotations. Finished up in Chattanooga after we got married.
Yeah.
Yep.
Met at the Mountain Opry. The Mountain Opry.
We did meet at the Mountain Opry at
Listeners,
Signal Mountain.
if you had not had a chance to experience this wonderful thing, there are still signs for the Mountain Opry as if it still exists, but it
I believe it
Bachman,
exists
right?
as in it meets at Bachman, but the center, the cute little antique seat staged. I don't know what that was, a community center or something, where we first laid eyes on each other is no longer operational, to my knowledge. So the day I drove by and saw the fiddler and the banjo player signs taken down, you can still see their outlines on the outside of the building. It was a little sad, but like Scott says, you can never go home.
It was this little slice of Americana on Signal Mountain. I mean, I remember going there, and it was wonderful. People used to dance behind the stage,
Right,
like old time, like hoedown,
clogged.
stuff like that.
We
And
were able to take our kids a few times when they were little, kind of when it was still going strong, which was really fun for us to talk about how we met there.
Yeah, it's great. It's great. All right, we're going to talk about books again, because it's summertime, and
we're going to sit by the pool and read.
sit by the pool and read.
Books
and if you didn't get a chance to hear last time, Carter and Beth, I think, did a good job of just reminding us of how books are not the central part of our discipleship with Jesus, other than the book of the Bible, but a really helpful way for us to love our neighbors as we understand them, to engage the world around us. And it's just a helpful thing, I think, for us to think about that. Everybody's reading, and so we want to slide some good books recommendations across your table. And so we're going to go around. We're going to talk about some fiction books and some nonfiction books and all sorts of things. So we're going to start with Scott. Scott, fiction.
Fiction.
What you got for us?
So I should say, I'm going to sound like what's the guy, the world's most interesting man? I don't read a lot of fiction, but when I do, right? But when I do, I tend to read like what I would call like generational stories. So stories that will like trace a certain family over a course of a long period of time or whatever. And I don't know why that is that I like those, but I do. But I don't want to over spiritualize it either, because I find them interesting. And usually it takes a lot of it's probably hard to write a story that traces one generation. So I think the storytelling is usually good. But if I was going to over spiritualize it, I would say,
oh, please do.
I know. It's because we also, as the church, we live in a multi-generational story, right? We live in a story of God's providence, which those type stories tend to draw out these things. Look, I didn't see those were going to connect, and now that connects. And so I think maybe there's part of that resonates with me. But the one that I would say is my absolute favorite. So it's my favorite novel, and it's of that genre. It's not new. It's a few years old, but it is called Homegoing. and it's by a lady named Yaa Gyasi. I think her last name is spelled Gyasi. And it is about two sisters who were living in Africa during the days of like slave trade, and they got separated, and one remained in Africa and one was put on a ship and came to be a slave in America. And it traces both of their families from that point on. And I found it to be phenomenally well written and good and enjoyable and encouraging and just lots of things.
So if you don't read much fiction, how do you find the fiction that you do read? Like, do people suggest it to you, or do you is there a list you work from?
So I read almost all the fiction I read on a Kindle. Everything else I'll probably read with a regular book, and so the Kindle winds up suggesting a lot of things to me. Yeah, I'm in the throes of an algorithm. Yep. That's right.
The algorithm.
Created good, even if it can be used for bad. That's all right. All right. Interesting. All right. Great recommendation. All right. How about you?
You going to put it in the show notes?
This is going to happen in the show notes.
Yep.
Yes. What was the other
show notes?
Podcast lingo that I used the other day? I forget what it was.
I don't know. But did we ever figure out how to put stuff in the show notes?
I did.
Oh my gosh.
We have show notes.
What?
Now.
We do? Okay, that'll go in the show notes.
Look
I
out,
was making
world.
fun of you, and it actually,
No.
you knew how to do
Exactly. So there.
it. So there.
All right, Amanda, you've got some fiction recommendations for us. What you got?
Yes, and I too loved Homegoing. Scott told me that I would love that one, and we don't overlap in our loves of books too often because he likes nonfiction a lot more than I do. And it's phenomenal. So I give that a second.
Four thumbs up.
Yeah, the book that I brought, which is really a part of a quartet. They're called the Neapolitan novels.
That was the spoiler alert.
Yeah, that was the Neapolitan ice cream.
I was not paying attention earlier.
And this is a series that I just really fell in love with during the time of COVID. And I heard Beth and Carter talking about how, maybe it was Carter, how he travels through books, and whether it was escapism at its best back then. I just started reading these books, and the story just captivated me. And it's 4 novels that are meant to be read, the author says, as one long novel. It follows 2 girls who are growing up in poverty-stricken Naples, in this neighborhood, this very poor neighborhood that's kind of run by, I guess we would call them like mob bosses. They run the town. People did not get out of poverty. Disclaimer, there are a lot of hard storylines. There's a lot of domestic abuse, things that come along with poverty that can be hard reads. So make sure you do your research before you were to read these. But these 2 girls in elementary school, our equivalent of elementary school, just become these top students in their class. And they become academic rivals, but also best friends in this really interesting definition of the word friend. And so that starts in 1950s Naples, and you see, again, it doesn't trace generations, but it traces decades of their lives. One of them is able, through certain circumstances, to pursue higher education and actually gets out of the neighborhood and goes on to become a writer and an author. The other one gets pulled into a trade with her family, kind of gets pulled back into the neighborhood, never leaves. And the question you find yourself asking as the reader is who is the brilliant friend in these 2 girls? Because one of them, they will have ebbs and flows in their lives. Their friendship will be very close at times, and they will be very distant at other times. But I fell in love with the characters. The main characters, certainly, there's so many additional characters that just these big Italian families that I've reread them because it's hard to keep up with all the names and everything. And I feel like I learned something more every time I reread it, but also exposed me to the culture of Italy and some history that I didn't know the great earthquake of Naples back in whenever that I didn't know about before I read this book. And it came at a time where actually we ended up traveling to Italy a couple years later. So it just maybe connected with me more than it would someone else. But I have to say, I've been trying to get Scott to read them. He thinks the covers are cheesy, but it was named the New York Times #1 book of the century.
Whoa.
So I think it's it's got a lot of literary merit, and it's just a really captivating, unique story. So I could reread it again.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So someone just needs to rebrand it with a different cover.
Somebody needs to do the
And
cover
Scott
better
will
because it
read
was
it.
originally written in Italian, and then whoever translated it into English probably also chose the covers. But one other interesting thing: Elena Ferrante supposedly is a pseudonym, and nobody knows who the actual author is. There have been theories on who she is, or maybe even if she might be a man writing under a woman's name. So I haven't Googled it lately, but it's a mystery.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So
All right.
I have not read those, but I will attest to the fact that Amanda really loves them. And
and
those shows that came out afterwards.
There's an adaptation that HBO put out that paralleled the first two I read because they were already available on HBO during COVID. And the cinematography, it's great. I mean, again, some hard parts of the story. Certainly check your ratings before you watch it, but just a really brilliant
they must be
storyline.
really good.
Yeah.
She really likes them.
Awesome. Fantastic. All right. Before Abby and I go, do you guys have any other fiction? So I see a couple of fiction books, at least for Amanda over here. And Scott, you might have another one on that sheet of paper in front of you right now too. So, but maybe you don't. I don't know. But Amanda's got at least
All
one more.
mine are
one.
nonfiction.
Yeah, one I can certainly recommend. Although I'll do a fiction one for Scott too. One I can certainly recommend without talking too much about: All the Light We Cannot See by Anthony Doerr. This is a great story of a young girl who's actually blind in France during the Nazi occupation, and a life paralleled with a boy growing up in Germany. Just a lot of redemption in this novel. I really loved that one. Another one we both loved was Pachinko, which is a Korean novel. Same premise as The Homegoing, where it follows a Korean family during the time of Japanese occupation. Do you remember the time frame?
No.
1900s. I mean, it starts way back and follows generations. Kind of traces their lives.
It's also great.
He loved that one.
Same general.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome.
All
Good deal.
right.
Abby.
Yes.
What you got?
This is my fiction choice.
This is your fiction
Okay.
choice.
All right. So I sort of suggested something a little racier last time. So I'm going to go with something a little calmer. So I love murder mysteries. I specifically love British murder mysteries.
Me
but
too.
right next to that, I am learning to love Canadian murder mysteries because they feel very British-ish. Not American. They're definitely not American. Anyways, whatever. So I have a whole series that I love by Louise Penny called the Three Pines series. Have you read any of those?
I haven't. I'm going to put it on my list.
Yeah, they're so good. Okay, so they do the thing that I love, the Agatha Christie
Agatha
does,
Christie. I know
where
all about it.
where she takes one character and then she just keeps building that one character out, so that by the time you get to I'm super invested in this man.
Right.
I think his last name is Gamache. I don't know how to say it because it's French.
This is like the detective.
Yeah, the
Okay.
detective.
Yeah.
Yeah, but what I love that she does is she patterned her detective after her husband. So she started writing later in life. So she had a regular job, and when she got married, they got married a little later. They were in their 30s, and she was so dissatisfied at work, and she was like, I really just want to write novels. And he was super empowering to her and encouraged her to quit her job and to set out to write a novel. And so she patterns her main character after him. But through the series, because there's a bazillion, I mean, there's maybe 15.
Oh, that's great. I need a new
know
series.
it's so great. But he ends up getting her actual husband ends up getting sick and dying. And so the tone changes as she's writing about him. And now I'm reading her later books where her husband has passed away. And now she's writing in essence, to keep his memory alive. And it's really beautiful. And the way that she builds his character out, he's very compassionate and kind, which is a hard thing to hold in tension with murder.
Right. So he's the Poirot or the Miss Marple or whatever.
He is he reminds me of Poirot a lot. If Poirot weren't so French.
Right.
Adam
or
Dalgleish.
Belgie.
Yeah.
So 3 Pine series, and I can recommend that with a PG rating. Quite
Fantastic.
good.
All right. Excellent.
What about you?
I want to recommend a book called Hannah Coulter. It's by Wendell Berry. And so Wendell Berry is a poet. He is an essayist who wrote a lot about America and particularly about sort of agriculture and the agrarian communities. But he wrote a series of novels about a fictional town in Kentucky called Port William. And he really tells the stories of the members of this community and the stories of how they have survived changes around them in America and their commitment to one another and to this town. And Hannah Coulter is about a woman named Hannah Coulter. And it's the story of kind of her place in that community. And her life is full of sadness, but also there's this kind of steady faithfulness to her life that it's a story of a woman who you might look at and say her life has been unremarkable, but Barry really is able to show how her life is remarkable. It's also a beautiful book about marriage. I have a pastor friend who, when he does premarital counseling, Hannah Coulter is like one of the 2 books that he
Is required
recommends.
reading.
Like that and Tim Keller's The Meaning of Marriage. And so it's great. It's a beautiful book. Highly recommended. It's also one of my wife's favorite books as well. So Hannah Coulter by William Berry. Some people say start with J. Burr Crow when it comes to Wendell Berry, but I say Hannah Coulter.
You vote for Hannah.
That's what I vote for.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Oh, great. Okay, so we have some good fiction recommendations. And so now we're going to go back around in the order-ish we just did.
Mm-hmm.
We'll start with Scott. And let's hear, what are some good nonfiction? So spiritual or also just nonfiction that you enjoy.
All right. So this is harder because I've got tons. I love nonfiction of all stripes. Most stripes, right?
Autobiographies.
I like good
Biographies,
nonfiction.
not
Yeah,
autobiographies.
right. But this first one that I'll go to is it's not a biography, but it is sort of a memoir, and I highly, highly recommend listening to this on your family road trip this summer if you have one. And the book is called How to Stay Married by Harrison Scott Key. It's not new. It's 2-3 years old probably, and I've recommended it a ton, but it's I have thought about doing this in premarital counseling, but I think you have to have been married for a few years before you really get the goodness of this one.
And I'll do a little disclaimer. I'd say if you're going on a family road trip with just your spouse, there's some things that I might not want to discuss.
Okay. Yeah, probably so. Or if your kids have like earbuds in.
Yeah. Put on a movie for the kids.
If they're screening in the back.
But so yeah, Amanda and I listened to it on a road trip like that, and it's Harrison Scott Key, who is a very funny guy. He's written a lot of other books that they're funny. It's a hilarious book, but it's about his marriage, which has some really low lows, and it winds up coming back to a better place. His wife chips in and does a chapter herself, and I think it's just a very real, raw book about marriage. Sometimes about the church in some ways that are uncomfortable to hear if you're part of the church, but probably important to hear. I highly recommend that one.
Pastor Hairshirt. That's the Reverend Hairshirt. Oh my gosh.
I looked him up also. I was like, I know which church he was at.
You can kind of figure.
Funny story about that. When that book came out, I'm a huge Harrison Scott Key fan. I went to Barnes & Noble and I asked the guy, I was like, can you help me find this book? Because I couldn't find it. And I told him the name and he took me to the self-help section. And he was like, I think a book on how to stay married would be in here.
Funny, Abby.
No, it's a memoir. I'm okay. My marriage is fine. It's fine. All right. What else do you have on your list?
I'll keep it to
nonfiction?
one more. I for some reason, I don't know why, and I can't even over spiritualize it, but I love reading books about the Troubles, meaning like the Ireland, Northern Ireland conflict between Protestants and Catholics that ran up really until not that long ago. And I just find it a fascinating thing. And my favorite book on the Troubles is pretty popular, and there's actually a TV show of that now, but it's called Say Nothing by Patrick Radden Keefe. He is my favorite author. There are a couple people where if they write a book, I don't care what it's about. I don't even have to read what it's about. I'm just going to get it. And Patrick Radden Keefe is one of those guys. And this one's about the Troubles. And I just find it fascinating to see how people they live on the same little island, right? But they hate each other, and the way they go after each other, and then the way ultimately it comes to its conclusion. It's just a fascinating book to me.
When we went to Northern Ireland as a family, we did a bus tour of that area, and they talked about Bill Clinton like he was a rock star, which was funny because I was like, I'm a child of the 80s, so what I remember of Bill Clinton is very different than how they talk about him. It's just, interesting little tidbit.
Mm-hmm. There is nothing like a good Northern Irish accent, I will say. It is. We have a person from Northern Ireland in our congregation.
We do.
I won't out, but I just.
But we make him read scripture.
I just want to listen to him talk.
When we were in community group with him, we made him read the scripture every time. All right. So we're doing nonfiction. Are we doing another section on spiritual books, or do we want to cover all of our nonfictions and then?
Yeah, let's do that.
Okay. Yeah. So let's do you. Did you have any nonfiction, Amanda, you wanted to recommend?
I brought a couple. One that I read is one by Nathaniel Philbrick. It's called In the Heart of the Sea. Scott recommended this to me. As an adult, I had read Moby Dick a few years back for the first time when we were, some of you know, we like to vacation up in New England. Scott went to seminary there. We have a lot of great memories. But when we were up there, I read Moby Dick for the first time. And this is the historical account of the whale ship Essex, on which Melville based his
how
Moby
cool.
Dick. And so when we were up there, I don't know a couple years ago, we actually took the ferry over to Nantucket, and it was really fun to be reading this book because Nantucket started as this gritty whaling town, which is where this is set in the 1800s. Now it is a vacation destination.
It's super quaint and cute now.
Lovely with hydrangeas and yummy restaurants everywhere. But for me, like a book, and Carter and Beth may have said this too, a book that connects me with a place is something that I like to be reading. So that was a great one. It's got some hard stuff because they're stranded at sea, but a really great piece of nonfiction. And then one that I've just started reading, I have not finished it. It's called The Art Thief by Michael Finkel. And it's about this man and his co-conspirator girlfriend, I think, and how they steal all this art all over Europe just for the pure joy of enjoyment of the art in their own space because they don't think that the common folk give it its due in the museums. And so they accrue all of this art. It's estimated $2 billion worth of art.
Oh my gosh.
Lots of heists. So it kind of reads a little bit like a mystery so far. I'm not done with it, but 2 people in my family have recommended it to me, and I'm loving it so far.
That's fun.
So that's
Funny
fun
enough,
one.
that's called The Art Thief. The book I just finished, I'm going over my allotment. It's called The Feather Thief. And
I don't know that one.
It's about a guy who broke into a museum in outside London to steal a bunch of rare dead birds so he could tie exotic salmon ties for fishing.
Oh, wow.
And
That's intense.
That's it.
There's some weird thieves out there.
If anybody out there likes tying their own flies, this might be a fun one to read. The Feather Thief.
A lot of our listeners.
I know.
I'm sure.
It's a big demographic.
All right, Joey, give us a nonfiction.
I will say, I mentioned this once as a sermon illustration, but it is a biography called The Power Broker, and it's about Robert Moses, who really is responsible for the shape of New York City. It's by Robert Caro, is his biographer. It won the Pulitzer Prize. It's been in print for 50 years, and it's probably had that many reprints of it. Robert Caro also is the biographer of Lyndon Johnson, I believe. And it is it is great literature. So it's not just you're reading it and the way he turns a phrase, but also it is this picture of where ambition goes wrong, because Robert Moses is highly idealistic. He really wants to do the best for New York City, and New York City is dramatically different because of that. But as his power grows, his ambition becomes untethered from actual real people, and he becomes like a very terrible man whose legacy is pretty ambiguous. So but it is a fantastic book. So I highly recommend that. What about you, Abby?
So I don't read a lot of nonfiction except for work. So I got some spiritual recommendations in a minute. But I loved Beth Moore's memoir, All My Knotted Up Life. I loved it. I listened to her read it. So, which was, I think, the best way, because that Beth Moore, Texan, big-haired accent, I love her. But she was, when I first realized that I like to teach the Bible, I did a bunch of Beth Moore studies. And so her way of teaching the Bible, even though I have some different views than she has, she's so engaging. And this book, I don't know, it really ministered to me in a time when I needed to hear that some of our tragic things, they really do, God weaves them into making us into the person that he wants us to be. And her story is just so full of heart and redemption and forgiveness and so much good stuff. So I love Miss Beth Moore, All My Knotted Up Life. All right. So speaking of Beth Moore and her spirituality, I know that you're not recommending a Beth Moore book. Let's go back.
I have read that though, and it's good.
It is really good.
I've been told it's good
so
by
good.
many people.
It's so good. It's a good listen. Okay. Let's start with Scott for what spiritual books might you recommend?
All right. Well, this first one is, it kind of fits in with my general lane when it comes to reading outside of work, and it's kind of like history and nonfiction and all, but this book is called Jesus Made in America, and it's by a guy named Stephen Nichols. And in essence, what he does here is, in a way that is, again, funny, this kind of a laugh out loud book at times, but also really helpful and informative and thoughtful. He sort of traces the way in which Jesus has been seen / used / thought of / popularized in America over the course of America's history. So it ranges from Jesus of the Wild Frontier to kind of pop culture Jesus and everywhere in between. And I just found it to be really, really interesting and helpful to think about sort of even some cultural things going on around us now. So it's half spiritual, half just history now for my 100% spiritual. In light of where we're going to wind up being over the course of the summer, which is in the Ten Commandments. One of my favorite, just very easy, I've read this probably 20 years ago, accessible books to the Ten Commandments is by Alistair Begg, who I've mentioned on this podcast before as a preacher, I think a whole lot of. But this is a book that was based on sermons, I guess, he preached on the Ten Commandments. But it's called Pathway to Freedom. It both covers sort of the place of the law and then each commandment. He walks through each commandment, and I think it's very easy. It's anyone can read it, and but also incredibly helpful and thoughtful.
Awesome.
And you'll probably find you've heard half of my sermon already because you read this book in advance.
He's a good teacher and mentor.
Oh, that's awesome. I love how you're tying that into what we'll be studying this summer. So I'm going to go the other way around the table. I know that doesn't matter to anyone but the four of us, since only we can see who's around the table. But I'll go ahead and do mine. My nonfiction recommendation for a good summer read is probably something that many people won't have over the summer, which is Invitation to Solitude and Silence by Ruth Haley Barton. So as you sit around the chaotic pool watching your kids, you might be longing for some solitude and silence. But this is just, I think, an excellent book for looking at your life and seeing what pace of life you really want to inhabit. And I have found this book to be very helpful in my own life too. I love to be busy and I love to do fun things because I'm a 7 on the Enneagram. So it's good for me to read things that require me to slow down and think about what would a life that's quiet lived before the Lord look like? And I think this book does such a beautiful job. And I love that it starts with the word invitation, because it does feel very invitational, not like, well, you ought to, be less busy. It feels sweetly invitational.
Can I ask you a question about that? Is solitude and silence something you have to practice when you're by yourself?
I feel like that's a trick question.
I don't know. I'm just curious. I've heard people say different things.
Yeah, I don't think so. So I think that's one of the things that's really beautiful about this book is she talks through different ways to pull within yourself. And even so sometimes I practice solitude like in the doctor's office. So instead of choosing to watch the TV that's blaring the Andy Griffith show or something, I will, or worse, one of those where they get everybody together on a talk show and they all scream at each other. I don't remember what those are called, but they're awful. But you can create a place within your heart and mind where you can go and dwell with God and just be quiet with him and settle your heart in him. So yes, the answer is yes and no, but also yes. I don't know. And now I pass it off to you. Okay. What do you recommend for
I'm going to recommend a very short book. You could read this in an afternoon. It is by one of my favorite authors and thinkers, Andy Crouch. It is called Strong and Weak. And the subtitle is Embracing a Life of Love, Risk, and True Flourishing. And what the book is centered around is the question of what does a life of flourishing looks like. And he says that flourishing takes place for us at the intersection of when we exercise authority, understood as when we use our gifts, really, and when we are exposed to real risk. And so he would say that we look at the life of Jesus. Jesus is someone who's fully God, fully man, and yet was exposed to real risk. He left the Father's throne above, and he takes it through all of these different things. He uses a chart that is probably familiar to lots of people who have worked in the business world, called a 2x2, and plays through what if you had authority but not vulnerability? Mm-hmm. Well, that would be oppression. What if you had neither authority or vulnerability? That would be withdrawal. What if you had just vulnerability but not authority? That's suffering. And he kind of basically talks through a lot of that. I teach this to the Chattanooga Fellows every year, partially because I just want to read it again every year. And I'm always so encouraged by how they think about this. And it's always really challenging to me to think about, is the trajectory of my life one that's real flourishing. So I highly recommend it. You could read it in an afternoon. It's great. It's fantastic.
It's a great book. I want to tell the people the truth. It might take 2 afternoons.
What takes Joey one afternoon?
Your
afternoon, truth and advertising.
Yeah,
Fair enough.
But if it took 7 afternoons, it's still worth it because it's that good.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah.
All right. Well, let's end with Amanda. What are some recommendations that you have for us for spiritual books for the summer?
I'll kind of do 2 kind of phases of parenting books, if that's okay. One that I read this past year with a friend, kind of in book club style, was called Parenting with Hope, and it's a book by Melissa Kruger, who I like her writing and her studies. But its subtext is Parenting with Hope, Raising Teens for Christ in a Secular Age. And it does a really good job of just anchoring you as a parent to who Jesus is, that he is the perfect parent, and gives you some freedom in remembering that, but then really walks through a lot of practical and topical things that come along differently when you're parenting teens for Jesus than when you are parenting littles. And those of you who know me know I'm around littles at church mostly now, but only because I've finished that stage with my own kids. So it was a really helpful book for me. Scott and I were able to talk about it. It delves into kind of parenting styles, that can be the source of conflict sometimes when these hard things come up with your kids. So it's been a great book to talk about with friends and spouses. So I would recommend that one. And then for our littles, I'm going to do a plug here for Our Parenting in the Pew by Robbie Castleman, which is a book that I have enjoyed discussing with young parents since even before I came on staff at Signal Pres with the nursery and preschool ministry. But it is a book that just kind of, again, tries to set your heart on the important things of taking a small child to worship with you, and what is the point of it, what are the hard spots, what does the Lord have in store for us all as we meet together as the family of God. And we are actually going to be doing a book club for that. We hope to do a parent husband and wife book club in the fall back at church, but this summer we're going to do a mom's book club at my home, June 3rd and June 7th, where we take half the book on the first evening and the second half on the second evening, and we just, fellowship and talk and share our frustrations and our funny stories, and hopefully come out with some practical tips that will help some of these families that have little ones that are graduating either from nursery to Kingdom Kids or from Kingdom Kids into the full hour of worship.
Yeah, that's a great resource.
Yeah.
And I almost feel like all of us should read that so that we know why the little ones are in the pews
I
next
would
to
love
us.
for every person in our church to read the book.
Yeah.
And then it might give people some insight and empathy towards, just people that are walking that stage of life.
Yes,
right now.
absolutely. Well, speaking of books and children,
Yes.
I hear that you have an iron in the fire. What project are you working on right now?
Yes. So I have been working on a children's book. It actually came to me several years ago and was shelved for a while through COVID. It is called I Get to Go to Church Today, and it is a book about a little girl who is going to corporate worship for the first time. She's dropping her little brother off in the nursery, and instead of getting to go into what she is familiar with and what she kind of wants to do, she's going upstairs with mom and dad. And it's a poetic book. It walks through kind of some of the sights and sounds, the sacraments, some of the words that you would hear in worship as a first-time attender. And it's really just what I hope it to be, a great teaching tool that you can read with your kids, that we can read at church with little ones to help start the conversation before a parent walks in and says, "Oh wait, we got to go up there right now." And so it can start the conversation and become a good tool for families to use.
Absolutely. What a great resource to combine with parenting in the pew.
Amanda kind of buried the lead there, but she wrote the book.
I wrote the book, and I have a fantastic illustrator, Sarah Robbins Powell from Sarah Robbins Designs. She lives in Huntsville, and she is, at the moment, probably maybe even as we speak, inking and watercoloring our final illustrations for this book. Cool. It's going to be self-published, so we'll probably have a little bit more work to do before that gets going. But I'm really proud of it, and I think she is too, and we hope people will love it.
Yes, well.
And we'll hear more about how you can pick up a copy.
That'll
make sure
be
we
fun.
share that. So, awesome.
All right.
Fantastic.
That
well,
ends our section of books.
All right.
Look to the show notes.
Look to the show notes. We will put it all in there. It has been a lot of fun. I know, the Signal Mountain postman has already been busy in the first shipment after the first delivery. I was talking to someone today who a big box arrived at their house, and their husband was like, "What is this?" And they said, "Well, you should listen to the podcast." So, Jay Payne, you should listen to the podcast. But we hope that you will take some of these recommendations that we have, but we're not done yet. We've got 5 questions. All right. I was
we can be
head on the
done.
button. Nope. No one escapes the 5 questions, Amanda. All right. So, Amanda, we've got 5 questions for you.
Okay,
We're
here
going
we
to start.
go.
Number 1, a question we ask everybody, just like all of these. What does reading the Bible look like for you these days?
Yeah, so these days I have a little more space in my life to read the Bible. I feel like where I am anchored normally is either what we are studying in worship or what I'm teaching the kids, or if I'm doing a personal Bible study. So right now that means, Exodus, and we just did Pentecost down with the littles. So I've been reading some about that. And I'm in between Bible studies right now. So yeah, reading the Bible, I don't have a certain time. I wish I were a more disciplined person. Every day kind of looks different for me in terms of when I get up, when I go to sleep, when I have time in the day. So take heart, mamas.
That's
who
right.
Can't find the time.
Make it happen.
The word's always there.
Yes.
It's my own discipline that
That's
is
great.
the
great.
confounding factor.
Well, as you go through your year, and you can pick something recent or something from a long time ago.
Okay.
What is a meaningful passage to you? A meaningful passage of Scripture.
So I always go back to the Psalms. I mean, I just think in all the seasons of my life, especially times of trial, times of doubt, those are Psalms. There are Psalms that have just really anchored my heart and become my prayers. Psalm 127 is one that I've really loved, just about the Lord's hand in my life, unless the Lord builds the house. That one, just of God's providence and guidance, because sometimes I can get anxious about things and about needing to make things happen for myself.
Yeah.
And just those words reminding me of who He is and becoming my prayers when my prayers aren't coming so easily for me.
So helpful.
Psalms, certainly Psalms.
Excellent. All right. So we always ask also if that's where you go willingly, like when you need something to grab onto, where in a time of crisis, anxiety, or need would you be least likely to go willingly?
Right. I said the book of Leviticus. I think there are probably a couple Old Testament books that would be harder for me to go to. But yeah, just the logistics and the letter of the law in Leviticus is not something that I probably would be drawn to as much now. Good teaching on that makes it
all the difference.
All the difference. So, but if I'm left to my own efforts, that's probably not going to be one. Although, do you remember at family camp when we did that game, Leviticus or Taylor Swift song, a few years ago? Some of them were hard. Some of them were hard to guess.
Play that game on this
Some of them were hard to guess.
There are so many great or Taylor Swift songs. Games.
Oh man. All right. Thank you. So this is another hard question. But who is someone in your life who has shown you the love of Jesus?
Well, I have lots of people, but I am going to have to say Scott and the most because I just think he's the greatest pastor for me personally. And he has just been so steadfast and faithful and steady for me and for our family when that does not always come naturally to me. He's faithful to me when I have not been just faithful to ground myself in Jesus the way that I need to. And so, sorry to be gushy. He probably hates this, but Scott has shown me the love of Jesus the most.
That is
in my
great.
life.
I think that's a wonderful answer.
What a fantastic answer.
Thank you.
Awesome.
He loves attention.
He
too.
sure does.
He will love the people loving this too.
Exactly. The podcast has really changed him, I think, these 3 times we've had him on.
He's very confident and relaxed.
That's right. Well, speaking of moments in Signal Pres life that demand attention and people standing in front of others and talking about it, you're on staff. You were required to give a TED Talk.
Right.
What was it?
Yes. So if you don't know a certain part of me, but we did mention that I went to pharmacy school. So I'm trained as a pharmacist. I have my doctorate in pharmacy. And I was teaching a class at UTC concurrently. I teach a pharmacology class there. I'm an adjunct faculty member. And we were learning about NSAIDs, which are non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs. So I did a talk on when you should choose Tylenol over Advil. And I gave a little chemistry, physiology lesson on the body and how it uses both those medications, and gave some fun scenarios of and asked people to raise their hands when they would choose which one and if they knew the answer why. And most people don't know why.
Yeah.
So I've been told that it's been pretty helpful for some people.
Yeah.
Probably one of the most, if not the most useful TED Talk.
I mean, I don't know. The vultures was pretty pretty helpful.
There was a TED Talk about identifying
vultures and birds of prey.
Birds of prey, yes. It was fantastic.
No,
that was
I learned a lot from that
Schlegel.
one.
That was incredible.
I learned a lot from that one.
That was a good one.
What I've loved about the TED Talks is just the spans of
Yes.
the different topics.
Exactly.
It's been really fun, and you never know what you're going to get on
Yes.
that morning.
We've had,
Will
so
you get
many good ones.
Advil or
Tylenol,
vultures?
right?
We've had thrifting. We've had fast packing. We've had so many great things, but this was definitely the most useful one.
Yeah,
I believe.
people are like, yeah, I went to choose, and I actually thought about it and figured out the right one. So
You might be starting to get a lot of texts from CVS.
Yeah, I can
People be like, "Oh my gosh, Amanda,
I can help you with that drug knowledge if you need me to.
so
Fantastic. All right. Amanda will be taking booking requests to give that talk at,
Oh boy.
at your
Well,
birthday
you can join
parties,
my class.
things like
you can
that.
join my class
That's
if you
right.
want
That's
to
right.
be a
Exactly.
graduate student at UTC.
You can enroll at UTC. Fantastic. All right, Bowens, what a joy to have you guys on together. What a gift.
Thanks.
Thank
yes,
you.
always great.
Fun, always fun.
Yeah, great to hear your book
I'm going to
recommendations.
remind you that you said that next time we ask you to be on here for the fourth time.
I know. I think this is my one and only, so we'll let
right.
Scott do the
There was
repeat guest.
conversation about if you appear 5 times as a guest, you get like a member's jacket or something like that. So
We'll think of
we'll
something.
think of something like that. You get a Skittle. That's probably what we'll do.
Lifetime supply.
Just 5 Skittles. Fantastic. All right, friends. Thanks so much for listening. Enjoy your summer reading. If you do pick up a book and enjoy it, please let us know what you think about it. Unless you don't like it, in which case you can send
Don't tell us.
Don't tell us. Thanks for being with us, and happy reading.
Happy reading.
Thanks for listening to the Signal Prez podcast. I want to thank our extensive production team, beginning with Matt Broom, sound man extraordinaire.
And thank you to Hannah Sutton and Jackie Carpenter for helping us out with all of our technical difficulties and making it possible for you to listen to this podcast.